Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien here on the morning of September 2nd, 2021. Sitting in for Paul Harvey this morning. Stand by for commentary. Well, Mr. Harvey, I know you're up there with the boss, but this is a commentary you would probably do today to the American people to let them know how bad they have deviated from their own situation. Today, September 2nd, is a day that should be remembered a lot more than 9/11 in Pearl Harbor, for that matter. But 99% of the Americans would say, what the heck is September 2nd? Actually, August 31st, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd should be remembered, and I'll get to those later. Okay? But September 2nd, 76 years ago, somebody did this speech, and nobody listened to it, I don't think. Maybe 2% of the population in the United States ever listened to this speech because they lost sons and daughters. So September 2nd, 1945, on board the USS Missouri, General Douglas MacArthur said, quote, "We are gathered here representatives of the major warring powers to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored. The issues involving divergent ideas and ideologies have been determined on the battlefields of the world, and hence are not for discussions or debate today. Nor is it for us here to meet representing, as we do, a majority of the people of planet Earth, in spirit of distrust, malice, or hatred, but rather for us, both victors and vanquished." And I would have changed the word victors to survivors and vanquished, to rise to the higher dignity which alone benefits the sacred purposes we are about to serve, committing all of other peoples unreservedly to faithfully complete and compliance with the undertakings we are here formally to assume. It is my earnest hope, and indeed the hope of all mankind, that from this solemn occasion a better world shall emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past. With, upon faith and understanding, a world of dignity of man, and for whoever man and fulfill his wish, freedoms, tolerance, and justice. That is the main focus of Douglas MacArthur's speech of September 2nd, 1945. Have we done anything about that speech? No. Like I said, only about 2% of your population worldwide listen to it. In America, probably the fathers, the daughters, or the sisters, mothers, aunts, and uncles of the 460,000 who died probably listened to that. And yes, I would have changed the word victors to survivors, because that's what you were, survivors of a total war. Douglas MacArthur knew that, but I'm pretty sure he was told to read that speech and not change anything to his benefit. But the way he did the speech, and that's something you got to look at, is what counts. Not what he was reading, is how he was saying it. In 76 years, you guys have learned nothing. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had Korea, Vietnam, the numerous little skirmishes here and there in Latin America, the two Gulf Wars, Kosovo incident, which I don't know what you guys were in there for, the invasion of Panama, which you guys caused, and cost a few American lives, and skirmishes that nobody reported, like the 1964 riots that happened in Panama due to a stupid issue of flags. Nobody reported here in the United States. All they reported was, oh, the Panamanians are coming down the border. Yeah. You ever see the reports of 1964? I remember it real because I was a 5-year-old kid at the time. And the United States put the border with Panama with tanks. And they did fire them, by the way. According to the reports, there's 22 people that died. They're saying. Policemen on the United States side and Panamanian citizens. Over a stupid issue of a flag. Really. There was more people that died than that. The border street that separated the Canal Zone from the city of Panama was originally called the 4th of July Avenue. Funny name for a street, huh? But on the south side from 1964 January 9th to the end of 1999, it was called the Avenue of the Martyrs. And why was that? Because both sides were stupid. Panama's side and the American side. And it all started with kids. And what's funny is I graduated from the school that started this, Balboa High School. And the arch enemy school, which I buried the hatchet with, the Institute of Panama. They only separated by 2.5 miles? That's all that separated those two institutions. But they were miles and light years away, separated really. And this is what I'm saying. In the last 76 years, you guys have learned nothing. Today, you're griping at each other of, Biden did this, Biden did that, when it was actually, he's the symptom. The cause is you, starting in 1945. You are the cause that killed all your descendants. Whether you like it or not, you gotta own the fact. You were the survivors, and you didn't look at yourself as survivors. You looked at yourself as victors because you had the only superpower in the world. Yeah. That may have been true economically and militarily, but where it counted, your society was not ready for it. And therefore, you tried to make the world and your image. And boy, has it backfired, hasn't it? Because the world wasn't ready for you. Just like you weren't ready for World War II, even though Roosevelt thought you were. That's the problem with seeking war. And making war clean, as you guys have done in the last 76 years, doesn't help. War is war. It's only fought for two reasons. One, you want to conquer and eliminate a person or a people and territory. And two, you want to keep your people and territory and survive for your descendants. There's two people that have learned this, and I don't think one of them learned it all the way, but the other one sure learned it a lot. The Germans are the Germans. They've gone through this before. They've had their good times and their bad times. The Japanese, on the other hand, it was a matter of saving faith and saving who they are. And when they disastrous loss in 1945, that changed their psyche, and to this day it still affects their psyche. The Germans, they got rid of that a long time ago. They're the Germans. I mean, there's nothing you can do about the Germans. The Italians, same way. They're still, hey, we go on here. They did nothing. But the Japanese have. And 2011 proved it when they got another nuclear issue. You see what I mean, Americans? You guys have lost Douglas MacArthur's meaning of September 2nd, 1945. You never listened to it. Therefore, you're paying the price. 9/11 is the price you paid for not listening to September 2nd, 1945. And going on pushing your values that nobody wanted. On a world that wasn't ready for you and you weren't ready for it. And you called yourself an advanced race. This is what I'm saying about your planet. There's no advanced race here. There's just a whole bunch of you guys trying to be top dog and don't understand that this planet is shared by everybody. And whether you like it or not, you're going to have to coexist with them. How are you going to handle the withdrawal here? Forget about national disgrace. You had that in Vietnam too. And then you went back and did the same stupid thing. Didn't learn a lesson from that. You're not going to learn a lesson from here. Because you got to understand the opponent. You never understood the Japanese. You never understood the Germans. And you definitely don't understand the Taliban and ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Or even Saudi Arabia, for that matter. You don't understand how they think, how they go about their business. The only thing they got in common with you is if they wear pants, they put one foot at a time just like you do. What is it going to take for all of you to understand your planet? I have no idea. And speaking of the week of this that I told you, August 31st, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And here's where you don't understand it, Americans. You guys going, 9/11, 9/11. You hardly ever going to mention Pearl Harbor this year, even though it's the 80th anniversary of it. Are you? You didn't last year, you didn't the year before. Your news, give it about 20 seconds. But then again here, the History Channel is going to have it. All other channels are going to be 9/11. Yeah. You cost 9/11 to yourselves. And until you realize that, you can't correct your mistakes. And I'm not anti-American. I'm just telling you the way it is. For not listening to Douglas MacArthur in 1945 when you had a chance to really set yourselves apart from the rest of the planet and really do something for yourselves and human beings later. And you said, oh, well, we created the United Nations. Was any of those nations fit to be in the United Nations? Was China? China was having a civil war. So why did you give it all the appointments you gave it to her? France, Germany wasn't allowed in there until it got 1949, I believe. But Britain and France and the other countries, they had losses, big losses. People losses and a lot of losses. But they didn't change their thing. They still had their colonials and they still kept on being colonials. See what I mean? They didn't change their way of thinking about the human being and the human race and what is the human race here for. Douglas MacArthur made a mention to that in his speech and nobody listened to him. Nobody will listen to him either today. So if Mr. Paul Harvey, who I'm sitting in this chair for, is there with the boss and you run into General MacArthur up there, tell him like you, his speech went down to deaf ears. Sitting in for Paul Harvey today. Oh, and before I go, I told you I would explain that week. August 31st, 1939, the Germans signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. September 1st, the Germans invaded Poland. 1939. And here's what caused World War II to start. You had agreements, as you say, like you have with Afghanistan. The British had agreements with the Poles. Come to their aid. You had agreements with Afghanistan when you submitted your forces on September 11th, 2001, and invaded Afghanistan soon after that. You set up agreements with the country, which really was no country at all. It was just peoples that didn't know what the heck was going on because they've had war after war. You should have learned from the Russians or the Greeks, but you never did. So therefore, the British never learned either. And the Poles, what did they get out of this? Nothing. 22 million dead. The Russians kept them under their control till 1989, after the war. Did they ever get free by the West? Absolutely not. Did the British come to their aid? Absolutely not. Because no British, American, or any Allied forces ever touched Poland. Yeah. See what I mean? September 1st, Polish lost a lot. And the world lost because they got drawn into a total war for the next 6 years. September 2nd, the surrender of the Japanese. Germany had already surrendered on May 8th. And Italy was kicked out of the war back in 1943 when Benito Mussolini was hung in Milan with his mistress. Yeah, they hung him up, upside down too, boys. And September 3rd, that's the day that the British, after some soul searching, declared war on Germany to aid Poland. Why? Well, I don't think even the British knew. You might want to ask the ghost of Neville Chamberlain or Winston Churchill why they did that. Only they can know. Or you might want to ask Queen Elizabeth if her father ever told her why they did that in 1939. That's the only person alive that I know, if she talked to her dad, can probably tell him why did the British make that fateful decision that turned the world into 90 million people dead in 6 years. You see what I mean, Americans? You've lost everything. You lost your dignity. You've lost track of where you came from. And you lost track of your ancestors in 1945 who were glad they survived unscathed for the most part. Sitting in for Paul Harvey, this is your favorite alien. Good day.